To D&D players, what's the best moment you've had in a game? Part 2. I ran a campaign with some friends and brought my brother into the fold for the first time ever. He's a Marine and was playing one of my pre-mages, Johnny Redsword, a human warrior. I planned a risky gambit at the end of one of the sessions to split the party. One of the players, a halfling, was recuperating upstairs at an inn when he's kidnapped by a team of goblins who have a cart waiting outside below the room's window. The rest of the party arrives just as the kidnapping is taking place, and a fine battle begins in earnest. My intention was to end the session once the kidnappee is out the window and have the remaining goblins book it, a fast exit that would broker no chase. My brother had other ideas. No man left behind. Johnny Redsword grabs a fleeing goblin and pulls him back inside, effectively continuing the session since I won't end a game mid-battle. Then he bursts out the window after the cart, which opts to leave without the last goblin. He is followed in short order by the rest of the troops. Someone aims an arrow at a cartwheel and rolls a nat 20, dropping its speed. Redsword is chasing down the cart, which is still rolling at a fair clip, and eventually gets on board. The halfling, who has been stuffed in a bag, is frantically rolling saves against the poison and succeeding. Some modified grapple checks to get out of the bag that a goblin is now sitting on. Goblins are being thrown off the cart and shredded by the ground crew, and anyone left on board is being run through by Redsword. The halfling finally makes his way out of the bag and stabs a goblin. Finally, the only living NPC is the cart mule that they adopt. The cart is entirely destroyed. An extra hour of unscripted gameplay that was entirely awesome. There have been quite a few memorable moments that occurred while I was a dungeon master, like the encounter with the sexy statue that I recently wrote about. But my favorite memory from Dungeons & Dragons occurred when I was a player. My character was an odd little fellow, and I mean that literally since he was a dwarf, whose backstory described him as being the heir apparent to an ancient distillery where the lost method of brewing Dragon's Fire whiskey had been rediscovered. This haphazard adventurer would keep a supply of the volatile elixir on him at all times, and something rather peculiar would happen when he drank enough of it. See, the dwarf in question was ostensibly a sorcerer, albeit one with curiously high strength, but he was somewhat lacking in wisdom. As a result, he had a tendency to fail his will saves, thereby becoming egregiously drunk after his first taste of liquor. He would temporarily lose all magical ability, abandon any semblance of rational thought, and transform into an enraged berserker for the entire time that he was inebriated. This certainly had its benefits, which is why much of the character's equipment was focused on getting hammered as efficiently as possible, up to and including the fact that his staff was a beer bong. In short, I was playing a magically talented alcoholic with anger management issues. As is probably evident by this point, the dungeon master for this game was happy to bend some rules for the sake of entertainment, and that's probably why my character was allowed to survive what was easily his most absurd triumph. After entering what had appeared to be a welcoming inn, our party was ambushed by a group of bandits who were working with a beholder. The illusion, as the inn turned out to be, fell away to reveal an arena-like structure with no visible escape route and no place to hide from the half-dozen crossbows that were aimed at us. My character responded to this discovery by bringing a bottle to his lips, only to have it shatter as a steel-tipped bolt pierced the glass. A second attempt at a drink prompted similar results, and the dwarf became thoroughly drenched in arcane alcohol. I'm nothing if not adaptable though, so I took advantage of this situation by casting Flaming Sphere. The moment that the ball manifested, my soaked sorcerer went up in a blaze of thaumaturgic fire. Since the combustion counted as a magical effect, I had to roll and fail a will save, thereby transforming my dwarven sorcerer, who had been desperate to get drunk, into a screaming avatar of literally burning fury. He charged about the arena, setting the wooden walls alight and causing our captors to flee, then set about smashing his way to freedom. The party's cleric, thinking fast, used her last remaining spell for the day to cast Dispel Magic, and my character fell to the ground. He was rather well done, as it were, but he was victorious and alive. His first words, upon waking up, were, "I could really use a drink." TLDR, Dwarven Drunk detonates, deals debilitating damage. There are two that come to mind. First was the first time we found a dragon. We successfully bluffed our way into not only just walking away from him, but also robbing him blind as we did, so it was hilarious. The second was the creation of Hamhawk. Our DM described the larder of our new guild HQ as having ham hocks strung from the rafters. A slight misunderstanding, and suddenly we had a hawk in our larder whose job was to carry the ham and bring it to us when we needed some. When we're hungover, Hamhawk is a godsend. He brings us ham. Oh, and also the time we were sneaking through a destroyed township infested with hobgoblins. As we snuck through, our path led us through a stable, and the dragonborn in our party, wearing a helmet with deer antlers, cut open and climbed inside the corpse of a horse. I prestidigitated the horse's eyes to appear fire, and the dwarf hopped on its back. He then proceeded to gallop towards the guards, who were scared shitless by the oncoming horse from hell and its rider. We do some pretty messed up stuff in our campaign. I have a character named Thar One-Tooth, firstborn son of the Tooth clan. Backstory: his father is an orc warlord who married into a human noble family to unite their clan with the human kingdom. So Thar is a half-orc fighter with a noble background, 5th edition. Thar rocks an 18 strength, 15 dexterity, 14 constitution, 7 wisdom, 9 charisma. And why did I save intelligence for last? Because it's a 4. Thar's dumber than a wet sack of concrete. So his father decided that the best way that Thar can help out the kingdom is to go on a very important diplomatic mission, literally anywhere that isn't home. Fast forward to the 4th or 5th game session. We were underground, fighting gray oozes. Thar crit fumbled, house rule, and got his sword eaten by the metal-dissolving ooze. Oops. I then improv'd a little backstory that it was, in fact, his family's ancestral blade, and his father didn't know he took it. Thar was now unarmed. The next room featured a number of inanimate skeletons, so Thar grabbed a leg bone and used it for a while as a makeshift club. A few rooms later was a puzzle, which we failed to solve, so it summoned some monsters to fight. The rest of the party was taking on an air elemental, which left Thar up against a griffin one-on-one. He hit it with his leg club a couple times until I rolled another critical fumble and the leg shattered. So Thar just started punching the griffin over and over. Thanks to lucky rolls and lots of hit points, he killed it before it killed him. And because it was summoned from an extraplanar source, it dissolved into mist. But Thar is way too stupid to understand all that. And that is the story of how Thar One-Tooth punched a griffin until it melted. Thar also once survived a 700-foot fall, had a brief brush with Cthulhu, and Kool-Aid manned his way through 3 walls in a row. I love being Thar. Life is so much more simple when you're Thar. TLDR, if you value the moon, don't play with physics majors. My group in college consisted of 2 math and physics majors, a physics major, and 2 comp-sci majors, one of which was the DM. One of the math and physics majors was that guy. The guy who gets bored with the campaign and tries to have fun with it. We put up with him mainly because he always managed to make things interesting for us. We got really good at improvising because when the mage gets bored, things can get ugly. One day we were walking through a forest or something, and he says, "Wait a second, when I cast spells, where's that energy coming from? Like, it's energy or matter coming from nowhere, that violates physics. Exactly how much energy am I able to create out of nothing here?" Being physics majors, we spend about 15 minutes working through the various spells he can cast and figure out how much energy they would require from a thermodynamic standpoint. He then proceeds to focus a spell to a single point and casts it at the moon. The amount of energy in this spell is greater than the energy it would take to rip apart the moon, so if it works, nat fucking 20. The DM glared a glare like I have never seen before. You explode the moon. Our next campaign took place on a world with no moon, but a new set of rings that people keep talking about. This probably isn't the greatest, but we get really batshit crazy a lot of the time, and this was recent. Me and my friends have been playing for a few years, and we had some new people with us. I am a half-orc fighter for this with low int, so I played myself a little dopey. I made friends with a shopkeeper and slept in his shop because I didn't trust the inn owner. New player is a rogue and wants to break into the shop wearing a mask and sets off an alarm spell, waking me up. In a panic, I rush to the shopkeeper's aid, thinking my new friend is in trouble, see a masked man breaking in, and thinking it's a robber or murderer, I rush him with my axe. One roll and the rogue is down. Take off the mask, realize my mistake, and start trying to revive him, causing more damage. This happened in 30 minutes from campaign start and was first combat. The campaign lasted 5 more hours and didn't get any better. The guy thought it was a fun intro to D&D though. Now here's another personal yarn from yours truly, Dave Makes Noises, me, the person reading this to you. The party consisted of Fosco and Vosco Thunderfist, a bickering pair of dwarvish brothers. One was a barbarian and the other a war cleric, respectively. Then there was Amara, an Eladrin assassin, and my Water Genasi moon druid, Eddie. The party had just received the deed to their very own keep, and we were tasked with clearing it out and settling in. A quick wild-shape surveillance of the area revealed a couple of watchmen in the ramparts whom we dispatched quietly and quickly. It was in that moment, however, when we made the cardinal mistake that more or less fucked our trajectory for the sessions to follow. You see, after dispatching the watchmen, we began snooping around the keep. We discovered a magically locked vault, a dark tunnel littered with stern warnings and a bad vibe, a large courtyard with a large pond in the northeast corner, in which lived a shambling mound. We also discovered a wine and ale cellar, guard and servant quarters, and a pretty serious throne room. Now, about halfway through our snoop, the devils that had been inhabiting this keep were alerted to our presence. Apparently, we had forgotten to hide the bodies of the watchmen we had popped earlier, and by the time we had finished exploring the western half of the keep and made our way into the main house for the first time, a battalion of chained devils and hellcats were marching towards the front doors of the house. We barricaded ourselves in as best we could and scrambled desperately about the house seeking a panic room, a safe room, or an armory. We ended up in a throne room, liberally littered with large mounds of vaguely humanoid bones. In the back center of the room, there were a couple of hellcats, 2 chained devils, and a throne. Upon this throne, hewn of the very same bones we walked upon, sat a very clearly very tough devil who was also very clearly very cheesed about his men whom we had offed and the fact that we were scampering about his home unannounced, brandishing a fucking deed to the place. Brief words were exchanged about the nature of real estate and squatters' rights, and then Eddie goes, "Hey guys, looks like we've entered the bone zone, huh? Huh?" There's a brief silence. The DM narrows his eyes and looks me dead in mine. Roll initiative. These dudes beat the ever-loving shit out of us. Eddie went down twice and most of my party was bloodied. Upon being stabilized for probably the 3rd time, Eddie cast Windwalk on the party, or as we like to call it, Flatulent Aerial Rapid Transport. Everybody was transformed into a cloud of gas, and with our move speeds raised to 600, we booked it the fuck out of there and locked ourselves into the magically sealed vault below the west side of the grounds. After a long rest and a what the fuck are we gonna do talk, we opened the vault to find the entire passageway littered with deadly traps. One almost wiped us out with a fireball. Amara got to work disarming the traps as best she could, and we escaped to find an empty keep, and from the nearby village, the sounds of screaming, the sights of smoke and fire, and the sickly smell of singed flesh. The devils had descended upon the village, were throwing live children into a huge roaring fire, and had torched the town's most sacred tree. We fought them off and helped the villagers rebuild. Eddie did what druids do and communed with the sacred tree. After a couple days, the grass had never been greener and the crops had never been croppier. The villagers were all so grateful we had come to their aid in this time of need. They had no idea that this was a retaliation. Hailed as heroes and healers, we set back towards the keep where Eddie became total bros with the shambling mound and the courtyard pond. I think we named him Gary, I forget. We found the keep deserted and a note remained in the throne room stating that whatever is at the end of that spoopy tunnel is way scarier than the devils could ever hope to be and that they would be back eventually.